Welcome to another issue of A Rabbi and a Skeptic Walk Into a Podcast. I'm Gary Rosenberg. I'll be hosting, and Rabbi Dahlen from Share Tzedek is my guest. Good to see you.
Good to be back.
So I have a story to start this questioning situation. My band played the national anthem at Comerica Park last Saturday. Big deal. Kind of a lifelong dream kind of a thing. And I woke up Saturday morning an hour earlier than usual, and I'm going over everything in my head. The nerves were just firing, and by 8, 9 o'clock, the nerves were just constant. And I thought, I've tried everything I can think of to make the nerves go away. And I said to myself, okay, the nerves are not going to go away. You may as well stop spending energy trying to figure out how to make them go away. Live with them. When 1 o'clock comes and you play your first note, the nerves will be gone. You've dealt with nerves many times. I'm talking to myself. So I take the dog for a walk, and I walk around the block. I'm just around finishing, and all of a sudden, a sprinkler comes on and soaks me from head to toe. I mean, I'm telling you, each lens of my sunglasses had to have 20 droplets of water on it, and for the whole front of me. And I was just stunned. And I don't think it was 10 seconds later that I realized the nerves were gone.
That's one way of doing it.
It was like pushing a reset button.
Yeah.
And my question to you, not to be leading the witness, is this how God works? Is this one of the ways God works, in your opinion?
Oh, interesting. Like a question of, does God provide what you need in that moment to help you? Like, was that an act of God? Or was that an act of...
Was that just totally random?
Was it totally random? Yeah, it's an interesting question. To me, I think we always have to be a little bit careful, right? Because once we get into the territory of saying that something happens specifically in that moment for me, then you also have to go to the other side of the theological coin and say, well, then did this negative thing happen specifically at this time to me, right?
If you're not assuming that God is all good.
Right.
Does he always help you out? No. But sometimes stuff happens that just is... Now, I'm not saying that this was clearly a bolt from above.
Right.
I'm not saying that.
Right.
But it was exactly what I needed at the exact right moment, and it instantly worked.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to me, and I thought, I can't wait to talk to the rabbi about it.
Yeah.
So continue.
Oh, it's a really interesting question. So I'm going to be a good rabbi and ask a lot of questions back. Were you just not nervous the rest of the day after that moment?
No, the nerves were gone.
They were completely gone. Wow.
Again, I'll say to our viewers, I've played guitar a lot of times in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I've ever done that's more nerve-wracking than playing the national anthem.
Yeah.
Because it's a song that everybody knows.
Right.
And everybody is taking their hat off and they're standing dead silent listening to us. And if you make a mistake, it'll be known by everybody in the ballpark.
And it's not just a song.
It's not just a song.
Right.
So it's a tension-filled moment for the guy who's playing the melody.
Yeah.
Now, if you're playing one of the harmonies, you can make a mistake and nobody will know who did it. But if you're the guy standing there playing the melody, everybody knows. That's an extremely tense situation.
For sure.
So it's probably, I've never felt that level of tension before. Now, we've done the national anthem a couple dozen times. Do I feel it every time? No.
Yeah.
This was a big gig.
Comerica's
So there I was.
Different.
There I was, and I was in need of a reset. And I had just decided, I told the story. So the question is, if there's a God that you and I believe in, and maybe we believe in a God in a different way than each other does.
Yeah.
How does he communicate with us? Is this a somebody said that God won't show you his face, he'll show you his back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know exactly what that means, but it's like, yeah, it's not a clear message. My friends who are not religious or anti-religious would laugh at me
Yeah.
for thinking that this was meaningful.
Yeah.
Are you?
No, I'm definitely not. I mean, I wouldn't, first
Thank
of
you.
all. But yeah, I think I look at it just slightly differently, where I think God is my way of understanding God is that God is always talking to us and always in communication with us, and then it's those moments when we are paying attention back that we notice God's communication to us. So I think there is probably, there's other opportunities where God's speaking to us throughout the day in different ways, and sometimes we pay attention to those things, and the great majority of the time we don't, because we're in our own stuff, or we're probably more often than not, we're just kind of numb to the everyday things that we would consider to be mundane, or maybe we just don't ascribe meaning to it. But I think there are meaningful moments that, had there not been in a specific context, we wouldn't have paid attention to it. Any other day, you could have been blasted with a sprinkler, and you could have been ticked off, or you could have been, it could have been something else. And the way of reframing it back is, you could have said in a different day or circumstance, you could have said, "Why me? God, why did this happen to me on this day?" And you could have been mad or upset about it.
Could have
right?
been.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad.
Right.
It wasn't like I was soaked head to toe.
Right.
It was just a lot of dots, maybe 150 little dots.
But let's say it was a little bit different, and you were heading out to your gig, and you have your guitar, and you're in your gear. I don't know if you were in Tiger's gear or what you were in, but you have your outfit for the day, and you're ready to go, and you're nervous or excited, and then you get blasted with the sprinkler.
And it's dripping, and it's on your guitar,
right,
and your amp, and now that would be, you might get more upset.
Right.
This was a very mellow message.
Yeah.
There's no damage done.
Right.
I looked at it, I said, well, this will dry in 5 minutes.
Right.
And when I noticed, like I'm saying, 10 seconds later, that the nerves were just gone, like people do cold plunges now.
Yeah.
That's a thing. Well, that's got to be a big reset for your whole body. This was just a shock to my system, and it was so minor, really, but it had this wonderful effect. And I thought, is this a little tweak from God? Is he like, are you paying attention to or what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that these messages happen all the time, we're just not paying attention to them?
Yeah. I also think that it's built into our tradition that we're supposed to pay attention more, right? The rabbis were very, I think, brilliant in their understanding of saying, the rabbis of the Talmud say that we're supposed to say 100 blessings every day. And if you pray 3 times a day, you cover a lot of those in just the morning prayers and the afternoon prayers. But for me, the more important aspect is to step aside from the 3 moments of mandated prayer to say, when are you also saying blessings? And the rabbis say, before you eat or drink something, after you eat or drink something, after using the bathroom, seeing a rainbow, seeing a person you haven't seen in a long time. There's all these different cases where the rabbis, I think more than we give them credit for, are just asking us to slow down and see those moments. And if we can, and I think you worded it beautifully about making a reset, and I think our rabbis are asking us to give ourselves a reset throughout the day. I think we think of a big reset when we think about Shabbat, right? One day out of the week where we kind of completely reset our spiritual clocks. But I think throughout the day too, there's moments of, I'm guilty of it like everyone is, where we get in these moments of, being frustrated or consumed or whatever, and then we just need something to kind of jolt us back into perspective. And I think the rabbis see that as opportunities to be able to say, God's talking a lot. How are we listening?
Is the phrase God consciousness, is that part of this?
God consciousness. Yeah, I like the Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel has 2 books that I think perfectly encapsulate it. And the books are long and poetic and beautiful, but you really get the whole idea just from the titles alone, which is Man in Search of God and God in Search of Man. And the main idea is that God is always in search of us, right? Always speaking to us 24/7 in all these different ways. Man in Search of God is a lot harder because the takeaway, spoiler for everyone listening, is that you don't have to go through some profound spiritual ceremony or devote all day of Yom Kippur services or whatever it is. It's just being able to quiet our mind and to be open and receptive to the way that God is speaking to us.
Okay. Is this something that you worked on since you became a rabbi, or changed your life when you decided you were going to be a rabbi? Did you do that less than you do now?
I do it. That's an interesting question, because I feel like being a rabbi is really hard for your own spiritual practice, because the whole idea is that you are helping other people with their spiritual practice. So there is an element of it that you got to do as I do and not just do as I say. So I have to model those things, but it is hard, and I struggle with those things all the time. I get caught in the everyday kind of habituation of what we do day in and day out, where you can kind of get used to it and not hear. I think the word is really to be in the wonder of it all, the awe and the wonder of what's going on in the world around us, if we're receptive to it. But I get caught in it too, all the time. And I think most rabbis do, and they would be lying if they said they didn't. But the idea of, like, every time you're praying, are you always attuned to it? Is it always deeply meaningful and spiritual? Or in those moments that are always supposed to be meaningful, are they always? No. But that doesn't mean we can't. It's a long way of answering your question of saying I work on it all the time. And some days I'm better at it than others.
I've heard people in synagogues doing their prayers at hyper speed.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered, I thought, well, okay, is this just rote?
Yeah.
And I met a guy named Yom Tov Glazer in Israel. And he took a sip of water. He was teaching our class, and he held that Dixie cup like it was a newborn baby or something, and looked at it like it was the greatest thing he'd ever seen.
Yeah. And said a bracha. Yeah.
And you can see I was touched by it.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a different level.
Yeah.
That's not just I know what the rules are. Now, as a rabbi, as a teacher, so you're like a mathematician who becomes a teacher and is not doing math anymore. Now you're just teaching math.
Right.
So there's some of that.
There's some of that for sure. Yeah, and then sometimes, like, I talk to my colleagues who are other rabbis, and I will say, like, there's sometimes when I'll give a sermon often I'll give sermons that I think the congregation needs to hear. Every once in a while I'll give a sermon that I need to hear, and it's about what I need to work on spiritually. And maybe some folks are with me, and sometimes maybe I have zero other than me. And it's just like, but I also needed it. Like, and I need to give my own spiritual practice. And it's important to be able to check in and to remind myself of why this is important.
Do you write a sermon per week?
I write a sermon pretty much every week, even if I'm not delivering the sermon that week. So my colleague, Rabbi Starr, and I, we switch off on every Shabbat pretty much. And even if I'm not giving the sermon, I still study the parsha, and I still think about what I would be speaking about if I was up there.
You think about it, but you're not actually going to sit down and write a speech that you're not going to give.
No, that's true.
Because then it's no good till a year from now.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Although there are some times when I'm writing my sermon for the week that I'm delivering it, and the morning of, on Shabbat morning, something pushes me to a different direction, and it's, that sermon is maybe used again, maybe not. But it's sometimes God's talking, and we gotta listen.
And how many times out of 26 roughly, that you might do in a year, does it change the morning of when something has struck you and you feel a need to say something totally different?
Yeah. Probably more often than you would think.
Well, you don't know what I would think.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. That's a good point. I would say maybe like 25% of the time.
As a musician, I love it when people are they got their toes at the end of the stage and they're making something up
Yeah.
off the right now, and people in the audience can feel it. Something's happening. I'm not even sure this guy knows how he's going to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
But that's fun to watch. It's a tightrope act, you know.
Who are your musicians that do that for you?
So many.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm listening to Larry Carlton play guitar,
Okay.
he's a jazz guy, but he plays on a lot of pop records back in the day. And when you hear him play live, I'm watching him technically as a guitar player, but then some people they seem to play, I don't want to say directly from their heart,
Yeah.
but there's some combination of the head and the heart that appeals to me, you know.
Yeah.
I like to see him a little bit out of control. I like Neil Young.
Yeah.
It's a very sloppy guitar player, but he is clearly making it up at the moment, whatever he feels, but he's got enough technique. He's been playing for 65 years. He has enough technique to get where he needs to go and make his point.
Right.
Matter of fact, he had a famous guitar solo that was one note, and he just went and played this one note, and it had so much intensity to it. I don't know if he thought about that, but he just did it.
Yeah.
So if that answers that question.
It does.
And as a rabbi, you find yourself out with your toes at the end of the stage going, I'm not sure where this is going, but here I go.
Sometimes.
Is that fun?
Sometimes.
Is that fun for you?
Yeah, and terrifying, right?
Well, in a good way.
In a good way. But I mean, that's like also, so one of the questions I had originally back to your story is like, how badly do we want the nerves to go away? Because sometimes the nerves are good, right? It is terrifying to be in the toes over the top of the stage and not entirely sure what's coming next. I mean, I think there's a level of professionalism that comes with a lot of like the examples we're giving, where even if you defaulted, you have the technical whatever so that you know that you can keep up, right?
Right.
But there's also this big idea of like, I'm not sure if this is going to sound good. I don't know if this is going to touch people. I don't know if anyone is going to resonate with this. And it's still worth doing it because it's exciting. It's the moment.
It's the tightrope act, right?
Yeah.
And would you say that week in and week out, do you expect to do more and more of that as you get older and get more experienced and get to know your congregation? The better you get at it, the more you give sermons, the more you trust yourself to improvise?
I hope so. Because I think that is what, we live in such a, and I think modern religion really struggles with this. I think we live in really a performative kind of era of organizational religion. That's really inspired by kind of some of the evangelical speakers and different folks who have become, household names because of the way that but it's very much this idea of like, you are a performer, right? And I think there is an element to that, and there always has been. You can't not. I mean, the idea of a bema is a stage in some capacity. But at the same time, I think more and more people are thirsty for authenticity and for going into those spiritual places, even if it's messy. And not everything has to be perfectly polished and expertly delivered. Sometimes you just need, like, we're all just kind of sign up for this together, and we're all kind of speaking with our hearts open to it.
Sure. Now that's fine. It's different whether it's a wedding, a funeral, or a regular old Sunday,
For sure.
or it's a big holiday.
Right.
You can't wing it at a wedding or a funeral and not end up where you need to end up.
Right. Exactly right. If you're gonna wing it in some capacity, there, you better know your markers to make sure that you're getting to the places you need to go.
There was a famous rabbi around here named Sherwin Wine.
Yeah.
You've heard of him? You've
Yep.
read him? Very famous, brilliant rabbi who did not believe in God.
Yeah.
And he married my wife and I. And he refused. He said, I don't do. What do you say? I don't do rehearsals. So we had a meeting with him, and we showed up, and he made everybody come closer because he doesn't want to raise his voice either.
Yeah.
He's a little bit of a prima donna, let's say. And he opened up. I don't know if he'd ever said this before, but he had met with us. We were young. And he said, Gary and Janet, you are not flakes. That's how we started our wedding
charge. Yeah.
Wow. And all of our friends have been joking about it ever since.
Yeah.
And his point was, we were not childish, didn't know what we were doing. We were both relatively serious about it, considering some of us who were younger than others.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But he just pulled that out of nowhere. I'm sure he's never said that before, but he had decided, I met this young couple and they weren't flakes.
Yeah.
And he just thought, oh, that's how I'll start.
That's how I'll lead.
Well, that's memorable.
That is memorable.
That's probably not in the How to Rabbi book.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So you mentioned modern religion. Are you in a specific spot on the continuum of modernity, and do you see that changing? Are you sliding in one direction or the other?
Me personally, I mean, I think I'm ordained by the conservative movement.
So you owe them.
I owe them. I owe them. And I also think in the conservative movement and elsewhere, there is an understanding that some of these folks who don't wear the labels so prominently have gotten it right. And that we lose a lot of our ability to relate to one another and connect to one another when we're hyper-focused on whatever strain of Judaism we're practicing or how we define ourselves Jewishly. And, I feel like Chabad does this really well, where they kind of say, come on in and leave whatever Jewish labels you have at the door, because we're all just Jews. And let's focus on that part first and foremost. So I wouldn't consider myself a post-denominationalist or anything like that.
I wouldn't consider myself anything that I couldn't easily say.
Exactly right. That should be the litmus test, right? If you can't say it, you're not that. But I would say that I think we focus too much on it. And I also think that for the conservative movement, one of the things that we've done wrong for decades is we have defined ourselves by what we are not. So the conservative movement has always said, well, we're not Reform and we're not Orthodox, so we're like the happy medium for a lot of folks. But that doesn't really tell you about your values or the things you care about.
True.
So I think those things are more of the things we have to learn to articulate. So where I am in my own practice is to say, here are the things that I care about. And if I can articulate those things, then I hope that the labels don't matter and that you kind of see who I am through what I'm presenting.
And you are always aware of that.
Yeah.
And are you always attempting to make sure that your congregation understands where you are and where you're headed? And not to say that you need to be somewhere where you're not.
Right.
Are you planted and comfortable right where you are, or do you see yourself shifting over time?
No, I think I think we should always be constantly moving, right? And I think that everyone's, especially in Judaism is a journey. And my grandfather used to say, whenever you think you're right about something, that's when you know you got to start asking questions again, because then that's the neshama, right? That's the idea of no, we should always be wrestling with things. We should always be asking ourselves these questions. It's one thing that I think is really beautiful about how we do Judaism is that we read the Torah throughout the year, and then when we come back in Simchat Torah, we start all over again because the text is going to be the same each and every year, but we are different, right? Our experiences are different. We've gone through different things. We've gone through celebrations and joy. We've gone through maybe grief and sorrow and loss, and we have to find out how we relate to that text in that moment, which can be very, very different.
Okay, so as a conservative rabbi, you're right. You're definitely not this, and you're definitely not that. There's a long way to go in between, and you can find yourself leaning in different directions at different times of the day,
For sure.
or different times of the year. And I'm sure sometimes you must look at something and say, the Reform movement has this right,
Yeah.
or the Orthodox have this right.
Yes.
And is it okay with your congregation to say stuff like that, to point that out? Or is it like, no, we do what we do and we don't look in those directions?
Yeah.
Is there a home team aspect to it?
I don't think there's a home team aspect to it, mainly because the conservative movement has struggled for so long to define what the home team is. So I think there is a lot of understanding of, yeah, you're right, the Reform movement does this pretty well, and Orthodoxy does this very well, and we have to figure out what we do really well. And I think we do some things that are fantastic, and I want to make sure that we articulate those things all the time too, but also to constantly be evolving and to ask ourselves those questions about what we care about most. And Judaism in the last, post October 7th for sure, has challenged those questions a lot to say, well, it's time to define who we are and to really stand there, because our Judaism is in the spotlight now, not just for us, but in the world.
I'll say.
Yeah.
Are there goals that you have for yourself as a rabbi that you absolutely know that you will achieve?
No. I have goals for myself as a rabbi. I have goals for myself as a Jew. I have hopes and aspirations for what we can do as a congregation, as a community here in Metro Detroit, and as a people. And I think a lot of that is that balancing act of what you spoke about earlier, about the head and the heart. Right? I don't ever want us to be fully in one place. I want us to try to let it go where it needs to go. Sometimes heart's more important. Sometimes the head is more important. Sometimes they're perfectly balanced. Sometimes it's way over in one direction. But I think in contemporary American Judaism, we've really relied on the head a lot. And I think that the heart is...
In a good way?
In a good way, but also to our own detriment. Right? I think that our focus on intellectual curiosity and academia has led us to some very good things. And it's also kept us from, I think, some treasures of Jewish tradition that I think we are now starting to explore a bit more.
What directions are those in your mind?
I think there's things like that we've always considered kind of off limits to anyone who wasn't Hasidic or a Kabbalist, right? The ideas of being able to dive deep into these questions about God's role in our lives, or how we deal with the questions of if God is present in some moments and not present in other moments, or present in good moments,
or
but not
seems
present,
to be.
Or seems to be. I think even just talking openly about God is something that wasn't something that is mainstream part of American Jewish culture outside of Orthodoxy. I'll say that when I was applying to jobs after rabbinical school, every congregation has to fill out like a packet that describes who they are and what they're looking for in a rabbi. And I interviewed with 15 different congregations, and only one of them had the name of God anywhere in the packet.
What?
And I thought that was telling.
Is that's the one that you took?
No comment.
I knew you wouldn't. I knew you wouldn't answer that. So conservative Judaism is a little uncomfortable with the G word.
I think yes. I think pretty much all American Judaism that's not Orthodox has been. I think we're all getting more comfortable with it, but I think it's a scary word to say. Because I think we also equate it with fundamentalism or other things that can make us uncomfortable.
I'll tell you that my friends who are not religious, they just see it as you're just seeding your individuality and your creativity, and if you're going to believe that there's a God, then God tells you what to do, and that's it. They don't see it as any other way, and then it's a sign of your weakness.
Yeah.
To admit that there is a God who is much more powerful than any human, than all humans. That's unacceptable to a lot of people, and I think, not to be the kind of person I usually am, but I think that's their ego talking.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
They don't want. A friend of mine, after drinking for 30 years, he went to a rehab, and he was a lapsed Catholic.
Yeah.
Just the roughest, toughest, smartest, don't mess with me kind of a guy. And he came out of rehab, and he hasn't had a drink since.
Yeah.
It's been 30 years since he had a drink. And he was talking to me about his experience, and I said, well, how did you handle the G word? What is that, the fourth?
Yeah, the belief in a higher power.
Right, a higher power. I said, how did you handle that? I know you. You can't stand 12 years of Catholic school, and he was done.
Yep.
And he said, I had a brilliant sponsor. And he said to me, George, he said, you got a problem with the higher power? And George said, oh yeah, I sure do. And he said, what are you here for? And he said, well, okay, I'm here because, no, first he said, well, what do you believe is the most powerful thing in the universe? And George said, the human mind. And his sponsor said, and you're here because what? And George said, well, I'm here because it's true. He said, I am clearly powerless over alcohol and I need help. And he said, so there is one thing more powerful than the human mind. Apparently, George, would you agree that the most powerful entity in the universe is alcohol? And George went, okay, you got me.
Yeah, for sure.
That's unacceptable.
Right.
So in his mind, there has to be something. I don't care what you call it, but there has to be something.
Right. Yeah.
But conservative Judaism struggles with this a little bit.
I don't think we struggle with that. I don't think we struggle with the idea of there being something greater. I think we struggle with saying God. Because God feels narrowly defined.
Well, it's usually a man.
Right. That's the idea, right?
Doesn't the Bible use only the male pronoun throughout the entire Bible?
For sure.
Is that just in the English translation, or is that in the Hebrew as well?
No, it's interesting. It's a little bit more nuanced. In the Hebrew Bible, God is masculine. Either masculine singular or sometimes masculine plural, right? So Elohim is another name for God, which is actually in the plural, which is interesting. But when you shift over to rabbinic literature, so with the rabbis of the Talmud, they start using different names for God, including Shekhinah, which is a feminine name for God, which is the divine presence. And we can dive deep into why that might be, but sometimes the idea is that God needs to look different for different people and at different times. And for the rabbis, after the temple was destroyed, they didn't need the God of war and might and power, because that God kind of got destroyed in some ways when the temple was destroyed. What they needed was a God of consolation, like a mother figure, to hold the Jewish people after they were broken and shattered. So sometimes God shows up in different ways, and I think we have to be comfortable talking about those different ways and saying that God doesn't have to be the old man with a beard up in the sky, but God can be that question mark that exists as whatever this greater power is beyond us, because that's where I think that's where we get stuck.
Oh, that's beautiful. I like that. Certainly in today's families and in many, many areas of our life today, women run the world.
Yeah.
Maybe more so than ever before. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's time. It's time. I think that if the mom wants the family to be religious, they're going to be religious.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And if the mom doesn't care so much, maybe not so much. So that's great. I think this is a great place to leave it. We'll be back in a couple weeks and we'll do another episode. Thanks again.
Of course. Always
And
happy.
we'll see you again on another issue of A Rabbi and a Skeptic Walk Into a Podcast. Have a good week, everyone.